Hello everyone, this is Dr. Shijun Wang. In today's video, I am going to talk about practicing arpeggios efficiently. I think I had a whole series focusing on scales. Okay, I spent many episodes just talking about the fingerings. Okay, there are different groups. Yeah, black keys rule or the common finger rule, whatever you name it. But in the arpeggios, the fingerings are way easier to figure out comparing to the scales because there are only 3 notes. Okay, so if you were to come up with one rule, the most important one is no thumb on the black key unless you only have black keys in this arpeggio. And we do have 2 cases there. We have G flat major, G flat, B flat and D flat. Also we have E flat minor, the relative minor of G flat major. So in those cases you only have black keys, so we have to use thumb on the black keys. But every other major or minor arpeggios, we don't have that problem. So when we have 2 black keys, yeah, for instance, E flat major where we have E flat, G, B flat, yeah, we're not going to start with 1. We're going to start with, for the right hand, with 4, and then 1, 2, 4. See, that forms a new position actually from the first inversion that is much easier to play than to find a new position with a thumb on the black key. Okay, but since we are now using E flat as a example, the other thing I want to point out is that usually when we're doing these hands together, okay, the new hand position between the left hand and right hand are usually different. Okay, so we already know that E flat, the hand position doesn't start on the first note, but on the second note with G. So the new hand position is actually a first inversion chord, a 6/3 chord. Yeah, going down the same. But the left hand, the new hand position actually started on B flat, which forms a second inversion chord, a 6/4 chord. Yeah, so in that sense, when we're learning them together, we have to really know they're changing one after the other. The other thing we have to pay attention to, and this is another thing I tell my students to pay attention to, is that you have 2 types of switching positions. One is called crossing under, the other is called crossing over. Crossing under meaning your thumb is under other fingers when it's reaching for a new position, and crossing over meaning it's crossing over the previous finger. And between the 2, the crossing under is easier, okay, because naturally it's closer to the keys. The good news is when we're doing hands together, you always have one hand doing the crossing over while the other one doing the crossing under. So we can actually focus on the hand that is doing the crossing over. For instance, the E flat major, I'm going to focus on my left hand when I go up, because that's trickier than this. Yeah? But on the way down, I'm going to focus more on the right hand, the 4th finger reaching the, yeah? So in that sense, I know what to focus on. And the other thing that will help us practicing these scales, arpeggios, is that don't try to connect. Okay, if we are trying to connect the notes, what will happen is that we will ruin the hand position. So you will end up only reaching one note instead of reaching the next three notes, which can make the arpeggio playing much faster. Okay, so I'm practicing like this. Left hand. Like that, instead of thinking note by note. Okay, so we're actually thinking in chunks. And you may ask, what do we do when we're playing Beethoven variations or sonata? Well, we have pedal. So when we do, that gap where we're changing hand positions, we totally cannot hear. And the other thing about practicing arpeggios that might help you guys is that when we're doing arpeggios, our second finger and fourth finger, when we play the black keys, it's easier if we have a flatter finger. Yeah, and those really, especially if we use that when we're doing G flat minor, G flat major, or E flat minor. Yeah, so flatter fingers gives you bigger surface since the black keys are narrower. Yeah, it gives us better success rate. And the last thing I want to share, and that I also tell my students to do, is the reason why we practice scales, arpeggios, is because we use them awful a lot in the repertoire. Yeah, any Chopin piece, any list uses not only the major minor arpeggios, but a lot of dominant seven or diminished ones. The reason we practice is because then we can apply them when we learn actual repertoire. However, the actual repertoire rarely starts on the tonic note. Okay, so a D major piece doesn't always have D major arpeggio starting on D. So I ask my students to practice, of course, and then yeah. The nice thing about this is, first of all, you can always find the correct fingering on any given note, yeah? And also, it's way more practical when you apply these to the actual repertoire. Okay, I hope this episode helped you about the arpeggios, and of course, I can't cover all of them. If you have specific questions on fingering, please ask me, but I thought those fingerings are pretty obvious. Okay, so when you don't have any white key, use 1, 2, 3, but when you have even one white key, use 1, 2, 4 and start the one on that only white key. Thank you for watching. Next week we are going to come back to the ballades. I'm going to start the third ballade by Chopin. See you guys next week.